Vir- At the virtual twin on your platform?
I haven't. Ugh.
Oh yeah,
Oops.
well,
I'll be right
make
back.
yes, sir. Well, make sure that you do because it's gonna tell your touch of people and your contact of people way above and beyond anything where you're currently sitting right now. So before we bring Randy on, there's a couple of things I want to share with you so you can share with your teams. Some of you were with me last night after the presentation. So I want you to make sure that November 9th, that is communicated. November 9th is the last access that any pre-enrollments have. When we say pre-enrollments, we're talking about people who might have registered with you and registered in the opportunity, but they have not done the partnership. They haven't paid a partnership. They haven't secured a basic package or a pro package. All those three things, options still exist as of the 9th. They'll be purged from the system. Okay. They choose to return, of course, they'll return and they'll have to do things um, as all the other members or partners do. All right. So the grandfathering is over as of November 9th. So if you understood what I just said, just unmute your mics and say got it.
Got it.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we have an extraordinary opportunity here that as I said last night on the presentation, it's not really an opportunity, it's a solution. Because when you have something in your hands that can impact billions of people globally, that's a solution, folks. That is a solution. All right. And there are people out here looking for what we have. We just have to position ourselves for them to know that we're those people they're looking for. And a lot of this discussion is on the precipice, if you will, that we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot. Yeah, this is a MLM element, right? This is a network marketing element. But here's the deal. You're not looking for people who get more people, right? Or who get more people, or who get more people. All right. That's a slow growth operation. Here, we're servicing we're servicing people where they already exist. We're going after those business people, those professionals, those dreamers. We're going after those folks who want to have social impact in a landscape that deals strictly out of platforms. This is a platform age. People who don't want to be confined to brick and mortar. People who have products, goods, and services they want to bring all over the world. Jazzy's with us, and she's in Ghana right now, as an example. She has something that she can bring and operate from right there in Ghana. You know, we have so many opportunities and benefits here as it relates to this operation known as Lev AI. It is not something to be afraid of. This is something that's absolutely designed to reward you for getting in front of the movement of technology, getting in front of the movement of money, getting in front of the movement of relationship building. And this is the position that you're in. So the one thing I do want to put across before we bring Randy on, we don't despise humble beginnings here. Everything begins with you and the idea. And then as you build upon that, you're going to be absolutely amazed, enthralled, shocked even what it looks like. You give yourself a year-long commitment and take action. And you'll be amazed at what you might see in 9 months as opposed to a year. You might be amazed at what you see in 9 weeks or 9 days or 9 hours, depending upon your commitment, depending upon your drive, depending upon your dream, your goals, your discipline. You know, to see a process through and the community that's developed around it. But Randy, just let us know when you're ready, and we'll
I am always ready, Eric. That's the truth.
let me share with you a wonderful gentleman who I have so much respect and value. I gained so much value from him for his leadership, for his willingness to guide, his willingness to serve. I've come across a lot of great leaders and mentors in life, but a mentor is not somebody you listen to. A mentor is someone that you do what they say. You don't just listen to them, you take advantage. And I am in full mentorship mode because the value that he's added to my disposition, my life here in this world of Live AI, it speaks volumes, and we're just getting started. If any of you were on the 12 noon presentation, then uh, we have a idea of where we're going and where we are. But this is a free flow conversation. He's made time for us, and I would like to present to some and introduce to others, brother, friend, mentor, leader in Lev AI, brother Randy Schroeder.
Eric,
Randy,
you
you
are
have the floor.
you are a gentleman. Thank you all so much. Guys, for those of you for whom it's comfortable, can you turn your videos on? It's so much easier for me to talk to people than just to screens. And if for whatever reason that's not appropriate, you're at office or whatever, that's okay. But if you turn your video on, it makes it a little bit easier for me. The first thing that I want to do before I take the discussion into a business direction is I'd like to share with you all a life experience. And it's a life experience that I'll make it as concise as I can. And I pose to you in advance of this life experience, I pose to you this question: what have you ever done 100%? And for those of you who don't know me, I'll share just a bit of my background, just a tiny bit. So I was raised in a home that I thought that it was impoverished. I thought I was raised in poverty. I was not. And now I know I was not. I've been in Ghana, and I've been in Nigeria, and I've been in Indonesia and Malaysia, and I've seen what poverty is. And certainly I was not raised in poverty. And I've seen the poverty in Appalachia and places in the United States. I was raised on the lower rungs of middle class America. But let's just acknowledge what the truth is. I was raised in the United States of America, which is probably the most privileged land in the world. And while I hope that someday, one day, our society is truly a melting pot and that all is equal everywhere, but we also know that I had advantages. Now, I was not just born in America, but I was born into a Caucasian family at a time 50, 60 years ago when that made a lot of difference. I'm hoping it makes a little bit less difference today, but it made a lot of difference then. But I was raised in with the idea that because my family didn't have as much as some families had, we didn't have as much. And I made the horrible equation that because we didn't have as much, we weren't as good. Now, that was a really, really faulty equation to make, but I made that equation. And from that point forward, principally because I felt like nobody could look down at me if I was number one, it became something that I required of myself to always be number one at anything I do. I pick projects that are worth doing 100%, and then I do them 100%. And for the first long time in my life, the demand to be number one was as I just described. It was so that I could not be looked down upon by anybody else. Now, happily, I can tell you that I'm way past that now, and it no longer matters to me what somebody thinks about the car that I drive, or the home that I live in, or the clothes that I wear. I've completely embraced the idea that I want people to see who I am, and it doesn't really matter what I've got. But there was a long ways between here and there, long ways between here and there. And what I had to do someday, one day, was I had to find a new thing to push me and to drive me. Because if I wasn't going to be driven by this incessant need to be number one, which was born of a bad self-esteem, then I wondered if the magic would be gone. And so I had to find things to replace that drive with, which I have. They're personal to me, but just as an example, I'm 68 years old, but I have an 8-year-old little boy. And when I chose to have another family at this stage of my life, there was an implied obligation. There was a responsibility that went with that. And it was a responsibility to create a cash flow and an investment portfolio that will care for him and his children, as I've cared for my other children and grandchildren while I'm here. I have that same obligation if I had another family at this stage of my life. And so that's what drives me. Today, I still want to be the best I can be, but I no longer want to be the best. I want to be the best I can be. And if I could somehow help you make your best better than my best, that would be perhaps the moment of greatest celebration in my life. And so the point of all that was to describe the fact that I have chosen in my life to only engage myself in projects that are worth doing 100%. And I'm going to give you an example of what it means to do something 100% from my perspective. And then we'll shift this to a Live AI conversation. So it goes clear back to 1992, a lot of years ago. I had up until that point in time never been outside of the United States of America. They didn't have a passport. But the company that I was involved with announced that they were preparing to ultimately enter Japan. And there was something about that that I just found so intriguing, the idea of going to Japan and building a business. I mean, I couldn't imagine it. That was like a fairy tale for me. But I decided I was going to do that. I was going to do that. I was going to participate. But I had some fairly steep obstacles. First, I'd never been out of the USA. I had no cultural awareness whatsoever. I didn't have any of the advantages of a broad circle of influence because I came from this certain family or that certain family. And then a thought came to mind. Now, I've learned over the years, more mature thinking. A thought came to mind. Well, from whence came that thought, do you suppose? What I believe is that it wasn't just a thought that came to mind. I had a moment of inspiration. And then for a period of time, I viewed it wrong again, because for a while I said we can live our lives in such a way that we become eligible to have moments of inspiration. But then with a little more maturity and a little more humility, and then I say, well, what exactly have I done to become worthy or to have earned or be deserving of inspiration? The answer is nothing. We have moments of inspiration because that's the way that God works, not because we deserve it or earn it. The question is our vibration at the moment that the inspiration comes such that we can understand it and that we can act upon it? Well, I had a moment of inspiration, and that moment of inspiration was that I should eat on purpose for a year. Eat on purpose for a year. And that's what I did 3 nights a week for the next year. I went to Japanese restaurants in San Diego and in Orange County, California, and in Los Angeles 3 nights a week for a year. I was eating on purpose. And when I went to the restaurant, I didn't go there with my pockets bulging full of audio tapes. That's how many years ago it was, folks, audio tapes. And I didn't go there with samples in my hands. I went there and I became first a good and a loyal customer. And then I became a friend of the people who prepared the meals and who brought them to me. And then ultimately I became a friend of the owner. And I did that up and down the California coast for a year. And a year later, I went to Tokyo for the first time, and I had 28 different Japanese restaurant owners in the United States who had made appointments for me in Japan. And that was cool. I mean, that was neat. I thought, wow, I've done something here. But then in that very first series of events, I had a young lady who was one of the appointments, 24 or 5 years old. And she had been educated in the United States and spoke English as well as good as me. But of course, she spoke Japanese. And she told me, she said, Randy, that was an interesting story you just told, but you're not going to be accepted here as a leader. And I said, why? And she said, because, Randy, America chose to drop the second atomic bomb. Now, I am a very grateful American. And while I'm careful with the word pride, I'm a proud, grateful American. The absolute truth is that 80,000 people died that probably didn't need to die for the war to end about a week later. That's probably the truth. And you wouldn't find too many people arguing that. And she said, Randy, we're not going to accept you as a leader. America chose to drop the second bomb, and my grandmother was killed in that second blast. Well, that's a steep hill, isn't it? There's really no place to go from there. There's literally nowhere to go. And when the meeting ended and I was contemplating that, I had a brief moment. And by the way, I've come to understand that if there is a thing that we must avoid, it is discouragement. If there is a single one thing that we must avoid, it is discouragement. And I felt just a brief moment of discouragement. She told me of something that I didn't know how I could climb that hill. That looked insurmountable to me. And as I was heading back to the airport, a thought came to mind. And what was the thought? The thought was that I could learn and deliver a convention speech when our company opened in honorific Japanese. Well, where did that thought come from? I'd never heard the word honorific Japanese. I wouldn't even know what it was. And I started looking for language schools who could teach me honorific Japanese. It hasn't even been taught in Japan since 1939. And I found an Obasan, an elderly woman, who was not a language teacher, but who knew honorific Japanese. It was a dialect, I guess a dialect's what I would say, but a very formal method of speaking Japanese that was once used principally by royalty. So it's just not used very much, but I found a woman who knew it. And I asked her if she could teach me. And she said, Randy, I can't teach you honorific Japanese in a year. But what I can do is if you'll draft what you think you might want to say a year from now, I can help you memorize a speech. and you won't know what you're saying, but I can help you learn the words. And so my version then of doing something 100% was it was not an easy argument to make, but I was able to convince that wonderful woman to come to the United States with me, and she came and spent a year with my family. And if I was playing golf, she was teaching me how to say the word ball. And if I was at a restaurant, she was teaching me how to say the word knife and fork, teaching me the sound that went with the words. And that went on for a year. And so now it was 2 years of doing something 100%. Hold on. 2 years of doing something 100%. I then arrived at the convention center in Tokyo, and I delivered a 43-minute speech in what was later described as really, really good, honorific Japanese. And in fact, a book was written about it. A lot of things happened. But because I did it 100%, I can remember it today as though it were yesterday, though this happened 30 years ago. I remember it as though it were yesterday. Before 7,700 people in the Tokyo Convention Center, I said, Minasan, domo, arigatou gozaimasu, kono, shumatsu, mata, sugagetsu ni wataru, opening mae no junbi kiganchu ni itadaita, goshisa ni taishite, hontou ni kansha shimasu. Watashi wa koni mo kaka, social keso, international wa. 43 minutes, folks. Whenever someone does something 100%, it is unusual. People aren't used to seeing people do something 100%. But because I did it 100%, a book was written about that in Japan. Is that not an amazing thing? And because that was done 100% and a book was written about it in Japan, other things happen. This is a news magazine. This is not a marketing magazine, but across that text, what that says is Randy Schroeder, a portrait of success. Folks, you need to understand, I came from a home with an alcoholic father who never got sober. I got a GED. I didn't graduate from high school. I got a GED because I escaped home when I was 17 years old. I didn't leave home. I escaped it. And then the thought of having a book written about me in Japan, of having life-size posters of me sold in Japanese bookstores for the next 10 years because of that experience. What I want you all to know is that, and the financial outcome was tremendous. And it also was the least important part of the outcome. The outcome that I thought I was looking for, I promise you, it was the least important. The money that I made because of that did not change the rest of my life. But the way that I perceived myself because of that completely changed the rest of my life. Because that was when I stopped being what I self-described. And when people asked me, I self-described myself for decades as, quote, damaged goods. Being raised in the environment I was raised in, physically, sexually abused and assaulted throughout childhood, I was damaged goods. But when I found something worth doing 100% and doing it 100%, and then experiencing the benefits that came from doing it 100%, from that moment on, I have carefully selected projects. I have only delved into projects that are worth doing 100% and things that make me become better. Things which last generation, my last success, what it took, that 100%, that's not good enough for what I have to accomplish now. That's the truth. My 100% has to be more this time than it was last time if I want the next outcome to be greater. Okay, now all of that being said, my suggestion to each of you, whether or not it's Lev AI, find projects that are worthy of doing 100%. And you'll know if you've done it 100%. Right now, if I ask you, what have you ever done 100%? If you have to think about it, then you haven't done anything 100%. That's the truth. If you have to think about it, then you haven't yet expended yourself completely, totally, and absolutely to a project. And maybe it's because you haven't found a project that was worthy of that. Maybe it was because you didn't find yourself worthy of that. Maybe it was because you were afraid of what the outcome would be. I don't know. But, well, this, until now, I suppose that had nothing to do with Lev AI. What I've described to you in the last few minutes has everything to do with my life experience, which right now, I mean, still whenever just living it on a daily basis, living my life leaves me in awe and wonder of how could it be possible. So now those things being said, let's talk for a couple of moments about Lev AI. First of all, you can know that because I'm doing this, I consider it to be a project worthy of doing 100%. If it weren't worthy of doing 100%, you'd find me doing something else. I would not be doing this. And if there wasn't something worthy of doing 100%, then I'd be searching for it. That's the truth. And so I consider this to be a project worthy of doing 100% for a variety of reasons. There are some parts about this message which I think will make it more challenging and more daunting than things that we have done in the past. Let me explain that to you. Probably many of you here have been involved in the direct selling industry before. Probably many of you have. But I'm willing to bet that probably none of you have been involved in the AI world. Isn't that right? I'm guessing this is kind of a first introduction for most of us, maybe for all of us. And I cannot remember a single thing I've ever done in my life for the first time that was easy. I can't. I don't remember ever when I don't remember when the first computers were introduced and we were told to set aside the typewriter. That again describes my age. When we were told to set aside the typewriter and start using the computer, that wasn't easier. It was harder. Trying to figure out what in the world is a 3.5-inch floppy disk and what's that DOS silly cursor sitting there prompting me away. It wasn't easy. It was harder. It was harder. But those people who put the typewriter aside first and learned how to use it, well, they then had the what? They had the driver's seat in that environment. When I think back at every different change, significant course change in my life, I've always been the one willing to lead the change, but it's most frequently been difficult. I just want you all to know that I don't look back at my life's experiences and say, well, that success was easy or that success was easy. What I look back at instead, and I find my willingness made that which was difficult become possible. And that's where most of us have to start. We have to start with making what was impossible possible, and then making that which was possible less difficult. And then finally, someday, one day, making that which seemed to be difficult become easy. But I also challenge and counsel you all to be very patient with yourself. But as you hear me talking, you'll hear me speaking now. I've just started an accountability group. And that accountability group, I'm inviting people who are willing to make 50 contacts a day. 50 contacts a day. Now, if you've never made 50 contacts a day and anything, you can't really quite quantify in your mind right now. Is that easy? Is it hard? Is that a big number? Was it a small number? Well, you can measure it a little bit. How many contacts did you make yesterday? Was it 50? No, it wasn't. And so obviously it's a little bit more difficult than whatever we did yesterday or we would have done. So the reason that this is easier for me, why is this easier for me than it is for some people? Why is it easier for me right now than it might be for you? Well, if we look at a shovel is a tool, isn't it? A shovel doesn't dig ditches, people dig ditches. People can dig better ditches if they have a shovel than if they don't. But if I've been in the ditch digging for the last 10 years, then what have I got? My muscles are fit and they're toned, and I've got calluses on my hands, and I can dig a hole. Now, if you've not been in that trench with me digging the ditch and now you hop in, how long is it going to take before your muscles are really sore? How long is it going to take before your palms are bleeding because you don't yet have calluses? You see, the reason it's a little bit easier for me to do the things I'll describe to you is because I've been doing these things for so very, very long. Now, it may be that you've likewise been doing them. So let me quantify this for you. I've described a little bit about my childhood upbringing. And in third grade, when I was 9 years old, I went to school and I came home and I told my mom, I want Converse sneakers. That's what I said, Mom, I want Converse sneakers. But what did I feel? What I felt was I need Converse sneakers because I need to fit in with the cool kids. That was what I was feeling. Not that I wanted them, but I needed them. A few days later, I came home, I said, I want Levi's jeans because that's what the cool kids wear. And my dad said, well, that's not a problem for you, Randy. You're not one of the cool kids. So I just had this intense desire to be as good as. Now, thank God today I'm not competing with anybody. We all need to get to a space where our self-esteem doesn't require that anymore. But for a while, until I got a little bit better, I did need those things. And so actually in third grade, I read a magazine that I read in third grade was called Boy's Life. My wife is a pretty magical person because she got me a copy of the Boy's Life magazine that I read in third grade, where I found an article in it that said I could become a dealer for a network marketing company called Watkins. So in third grade, I joined my first network marketing company. And that same year, I joined a company called Watkins. And that same year, I joined a company called American Greeting Cards. And for 3rd through 11th grade, I went around knocking on doors and I said, "Hi, I'm Randy Schroeder. I've got a fine selection of everything. Would you like to buy anything?" And enough people wanted to buy something that I got Converse sneakers and Levi's jeans. Now, you know what I know. What were they buying that day? They were buying the little boy who had the courage and the depth of desire. I still get emotional about it. It's insane. It's so many years ago. It proves to me that I'm not all better yet because I can still feel it. But what was she buying? She was buying the need of a child. That's what she was buying. What I will tell you is that people have goodness in their hearts and in their souls, and they will conspire to the benefit of those in legitimate need. If those in legitimate need knock on the door. But if we don't knock on the door, nobody ever chased me down the street and said, "Hey, do you have some Watkins vanilla for me?" That never happened. What happened instead was I had to show up and knock on the door. And that was the same thing that I did all those years later when I showed up and I knocked on the door of the old woman in Japan. And that's what I'm doing today. I just keep knocking on the door. And so, by the way, it's an interesting world that we live in. This was my first network marketing company. And this, by the way, this bottle of Watkins vanilla, this is not like a bottle I sold. Samantha, I hope you all get to meet her in person one day. For Christmas a few years back, she went to rural Idaho where I used to sell and deliver these things. This is not like a bottle. I sold this bottle of Watkins vanilla when I was 9 years old. And Samantha went and found that and brought that to me. It's one of my trophies. Right? That's a trophy. And this the can of Watkins Petrocarbosab. That's not like one that I sold in 1965. I sold this to somebody in 1965. Now, life is really interesting because my first entrepreneurial experience was born of something that is appropriate for this conversation. My first entrepreneurial experience was born of the simple idea: I don't want to compete with anyone. If I'm competing with anyone, that brings out the worst in me. If I have to win, then does that mean I'm going to help other people win? It's contrary, isn't it? If I have to win, then somebody else has to lose. Therefore, I will tell you that from my own personal character for who I am, I need to carefully guard against the idea of competition. I can compete with me, but I must not compete with you. I need to make your best better than my best if I possibly can. Well, my first entrepreneurial experience, I was taught by a very, very wise person. And I hope that someday I can be perceived as the kind of wise person that he was then for me. And what he told me was, he said, "Randy, you won't just have more success, but you'll have much more satisfaction in life if you find a way to earn market share that someone else does not have. Don't compete for market share that someone else has. Earn market share that no one else has." And then he told me the way to do that was to put myself in environments that were growing so dramatically that my new client, my new customer, my new business partner, whatever it is, I was not taking from someone else. So the illustration is this: if this is the market and I'm in the market, Brother Eric's in the market. Well, Eric's better than me and he's smarter than me and he works harder than me. And so Eric's got 65%. And this is Randy over here. I've got 35%. Well, if we're succeeding in the market, in America at least, it's not this way everywhere in the world, but in America, people don't hide their success. In fact, in America, people tend to broadcast and exaggerate their success. And so people say, "Wow, I can see the home that Randy's living in. I can see the home that Eric's living in. And I see the clothes that they wear. And I know where their kids or grandkids go to school. And these guys are successful." So if this is the market, and there we have Keith. And Keith, he's over here and he's taking a look at us. And Keith says, "Wow, Randy and Eric, they're having this great experience. I want some of that." And so Keith comes into the market. Well, isn't it true that Keith's going to get some? Where's it going to come from? Some from me and some from Eric. And that's the way that it will be. And Raymond says, "Wow, those guys, they're living in a nice neighborhood. I want some of that." And Raymond comes in. And what's he do? He gets this piece. You see, if all we're doing is splitting up different ways of splitting up the same pie, then there is no real winner. There is no real winner, not really. And so what I was taught all those many, many years ago was to find markets that were growing so dramatically that I could earn this new piece of market share out here that somebody else didn't have. That's a better way to do business. And so my first entrepreneurial experience was in 1977. That happened to coincide with the day when the leading edge of the baby boom, and you all heard about that generation forever, the leading edge of the baby boom started turning 30 years old. Okay, the baby boom is 1946 is where that starts. So the leading edge of the baby boom, they started turning 31 years old in 1977. And when we turned 30 years old, starting that year and every year for the rest of our lives, our metabolic rate slows down 1%. That's what happens. And most people do not get more physically active when they turn 30. And so the double-edged sword is our metabolic rate slows down, our activity level goes down, and America got overweight. That's what happened. And so in 1977, having been made aware of that by my coach, my mentor at that time, I started a company called Professional Diet Systems. That was my business. And that was why, because 10,000 people a day were turning 30, and they suddenly became aware of the need to lose weight, and I didn't have to take the customer from Weight Watchers. So that's what that did. And it was an amazing experience. The way that life works, name of that company was Professional Diet Systems. And in 1984, I sold that company. So in 1984, I was 27 years old. And when I sold that company, guess who bought it? Guess who bought it? Watkins Corporation. So the network marketing company that I was a member of when I was 9 years old, they bought my business from me when I was 27 years old. And I became a member of the board of directors of a network marketing company at that point in time. And Watkins today still survives and thrives. They do more than $100 million in annual sales based in Winona, Minnesota. The two gentlemen who owned that company were Irwin Jacobs and Carl Pohlad. They also owned at that time the Minnesota Vikings, the Minnesota Twins, Marquette Bank System. And those two gentlemen taught me what it meant to be a leader and what it meant to be a man. And I got to get emotional when I say it, because rest in peace and God bless my father. I'm grateful today for every single life experience, but he didn't teach me how to be a gentleman, and he didn't teach me how to be a man. And those two guys did. Anyway, what does that have to do with all of this? I believe this. I believe the script has already been written. We just have to show up and open the pages. That's what I think. If we show up and open the pages, none of us have any even fleeting imagination of what possibilities are out there waiting for us. But if we don't knock on the door, nobody's ever going to know. Nobody's ever going to know. And so with all of that being said, I started an accountability group today. And it is because I don't ask the same of anyone that I ask of myself. So starting a couple of days ago, I simply made a commitment that I will give 100 people a day. And for me and our family, we all have our own spiritual and religious observances, whatever they are, or maybe a lack thereof. And whatever yours are, I respect them. In our case, we observe the Sabbath, and the Sabbath for us is Sunday. And so every day for me means 6 days a week, not 7 days a week. But I can tell you that for the next 100 days, 6 days a week, I will make 100 contacts per day. I will. That's not something that I might do. That is something that I will do, because I just told you that I'm going to do it. And so therefore I will. And if something were to occur that I did 91 today, then tomorrow I do 109. When 90 days has gone by, it will be 90 days times 100 people will have been given the chance to opt in or opt out of this possibility. I'd like to go back to an earlier experience in my direct selling career. First, I guess I should finish this thought that I drew for you. My first great big business success was because I had 10,000 people a day who wanted to lose weight, and I was there with the weight loss company. Now that bulge in society, that leading edge of the baby boom, it continued aging, didn't it? And so moved that football forward 18 years. Now suddenly the leading edge of the baby boom is turning 50 years old. That's when they begin to feel their mortality. If I were to ask a 25-year-old, what's your cholesterol? They don't know and they don't care. If I ask a 50-year-old, what's your cholesterol? They know exactly what it is. They know what their triglycerides are. They know what their cardiac risk factor is. My next big financial success, and it was a big one, I earned over $25 million in a company where we delivered a non-prescription cholesterol reduction product. Why? Because 10,000 people a day were discovering that they had elevated cholesterol, 10,000 a day turning 50. I wasn't taking a customer from somebody else. I just decided long ago, if I have to take a customer, a partner from somebody else, that's a rotten business. I need to be in a growth environment so that I can get new people that I'm not taking away from somebody else. That's just a better way to do business, a better way to live. And so the next iteration of that was what? Well, my son was the CEO of a company called Medical Marijuana Incorporated. That was a stretch for me. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, remaining in recovery today myself, talking about a product that I would not use. But there were 10,000 people per day becoming convinced that cannabis was not cocaine and it wasn't heroin. The passing of the Farm Bill said that CBD could be legal. You folks, my next great big financial success was because cannabidiol, you've all heard of it. There was an 8-year period of time where the only place in the United States of America you could buy cannabidiol legally was from my company. And that provoked that next tremendous success. And then it changed with the passing of the Farm Bill in 2018. Well, what is the point of all of this? The point is that every single breakthrough success I've had has occurred because I found a project worthy of doing 100%. I've done it 100%, and I have never chosen to involve myself in a project. Never once in my life have I chosen to involve myself in a project where the market was staying the same size. So the only way for me to win was for somebody else to lose. And so now, instead of 10,000 people a day finding out their weight is going up, not 10,000 people a day finding out that they have elevated cholesterol. No, 178,000 people yesterday used AI for the first time. 178,000 people will use AI today for the first time. 178,000 will use it tomorrow for the first time. I've done $5 billion in revenue in my career. I've been paid royalties on $5 billion in sales. Never, ever, ever has that been provoked by anything greater than a 10,000 person per day adoption. This is 17.8 times greater daily adoption than what in my career has produced $5 billion in sales. I want you to know that no matter how big you are currently thinking the opportunity is, you're not seeing it in its full light. It's bigger than that. The fact that it's big does not mean that it's going to fall in your lap or mine. It does not. The excitement of being an early adopter, that is a great thing. Guess what? Early adopters, they take a few hits along the way. Early adopters, they get knocked down a few times. Early adopters have to be resilient. Early adopters have to have personality and other characteristics that are not required of those who come along later in the game. And so with all of that being said, I've known without question, I can tell you specifically and exactly and absolutely what the elements are that are required for success in a venture such as this. They are first, a product or service that matters to people. In this case, we have a product or service that is being thrust upon people whether or not they want it to matter. You can't decide. Keith could not decide, well, I'm just going to stay away and I'm not going to let AI touch my life. He can't make that decision. It's already been made for him. It will be thrust upon him, just the way that it is. The question is simply, will we use it only like I chose to use a computer in 1982? Will we use it like I chose to use the internet? Or will we become a conduit to other people's use? And more importantly, will you become the one who can teach another? Folks, this is where the money is. There's so much confusion right now about what is AI and how does it work. And I would tell you the confusion is nearly as widespread inside our organization and company as it is out there among people who are not in our organization and company. It's by and large a bunch of folks who don't really understand what they've got their hands on. Well, what I see here is an adoption rate that is unlike anything we will probably see again in our lives. I mean, probably not. I mean, unless there's somebody here who's 22 or 24 years old, maybe there is. But most of us, we will not see something again with 178,000 people adopting on a daily basis. I mean, we probably will not see something like that. Now, the question is, how do we monetize that? The way that you monetize it is to become the one that others come to for clarity. Confusion is the enemy of productivity. Clarity is the friend of productivity. And so right now, each of you ask yourself right now, can you show a person, could you meet with a person and could you help them create a website in the next 20 minutes? Can you do that? Well, if not, then that just probably became job number one. You cannot be an effective conduit to a technology that you don't know how to use. And then the next question, are you yet using LevAI to craft emails for you? I ask that question to almost every day when I talk to somebody, are you using LevAI to craft emails for you? You know what? I have not yet had a person say yes, they're still writing their own emails. Folks, if you'll begin using the process, you'll start seeing why LevAI does some things better than we do them. We do some things better than LevAI can. LevAI cannot express emotion. It can't. LevAI cannot express love. LevAI can't do those things. Anything that is intelligence based, it's not just artificial, it is real intelligence. It is simply how it is being accessed instead of coming out of the individual's mind. None of us have anywhere near the amount of intelligence that is available at a push of a button at LevAI. And so my first question to every person is, can you show somebody how to create a website right now? And if the answer to that is no, then say, am I earning how much I want to earn yet? No. Randy just told me one thing that I can change today so that I can become eligible to earn something more tomorrow. Next, are you yet using the CRM Are you importing candidates on a daily basis into your CRM by using the screenshots? Are you? I mean, really and truly, no kidding. That which is measured can be improved. You don't have to raise your hand visibly, but raise your hand interiorly. Have you today done a screenshot import into your CRM and then ask the Lev AI email service to craft the first solicitation for you? If you didn't do that today, then there is no way you can tell a person tomorrow what your experience was as a result of doing that today. Isn't that right? It's what my observation is that one's perception of what this technology is literally skyrockets if we begin using the technology. Today I described the idea that I have an accountability group where I'm asking other people, I'm specifically asking 100 people. I'm asking 100 people, and I'll keep asking until I find 100 who say yes with their lips. And then I'll keep asking until I find 100 who say yes with their actions. They won't be the same 100 in all likelihood. But I'm going to keep looking until I find the combination of people who say yes with their lips and say yes with their actions and who agree with me to make 50 contacts a day. I'll make 100. And so I'm looking for 100 people who will do half what I do in just this one category, only this one category. Just do half of what I do for the next 100 days. And then tell me 100 days from now, if you've complied with that, you tell me the variety of ways that your life has improved. And it will improve in ways that you cannot imagine. The first way it'll improve is that you will feel better about yourself. If you make a commitment to yourself and honor it every day for just 100 days, you'll feel better about you. And if you feel better about you, you'll be surprised at the number of people who start being drawn to you as opposed to you having to approach people. Folks, this is the key. I'm in the program of recovery. And in the program of recovery, one of the phrases is that this is a program of attraction. If I come running towards you and say, oh my gosh, I think you've got a problem with drugs or alcohol, you'll run away from me faster than I can run towards you. That's the truth. You cannot suggest somebody do it. They have to want it. That's the same way this is. This is about attraction. If other people see in us that which they would like to be, not just see what we have and wish they had that. No, it's when they see in us something they would like to be. Kindness, generosity, humility. What are the characteristics that you find attractive to other people? What are the characteristics in other people that you find attractive? Every day that you become that more attractive, and I'm not talking about physical male, female stuff. That's not what I'm talking about at all. There are some people who, when you're in association with them, they just make you feel better, aren't there? There are some people, they just make you feel better. There's other people, when you're in association with them, you kind of take a step back instead and maybe become a little bit more guarded because they make you feel not quite as good. And now here's something I want you all to know. There is no such thing as being static in that regard. We're getting better or we're getting worse. We're not staying the same. It might feel like it. It might not be measurable, but we're getting better or we're getting worse in every single respect in our lives. And to the degree that we're getting better, that is what creates the attraction. People see it, they sense it, they don't realize what it is. Something's happening with him or her. I want to be around them. And when somebody wants to be around you, then all of a sudden there is no lack of candidates for whatever our idea is. Isn't that right? Because they want to be around you. And so whatever the idea is, it takes all the pressure off the idea. That's why I've said for so many years that the real business I'm in is in the business of growing people. That's the real business I'm in. If on a scale of 1 to 10, if my life's overall total combined successes are 4 out of 10, if that's where my overall life successes, and I'm talking about now my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health, my relationship health, my financial health, and so on. If on an overall scale of success, 1 being the most ranked beginner and 10 being the most advanced, if I were to self-appraise, and if I self-appraised me at 4, that self-appraisal will be of not too much value. It's when we have a coach, a teacher, a mentor, someone that we know cares about us, will only tell us what he or she perceives to be the truth. And we ask them on an overall scale of 1 to 10, where do you see me? Where do you see me? And then I have to be quiet and listen and not push back. I've had a mentor that I've had that relationship with for a long time. I've taught for many years that there are only 4 revenue producing activities in what most of us have historically done, the direct selling industry. And the first revenue producing activity is to simply write down a list of names. Anybody can do that. You can write down a list of 7 or 8 or 10 names. The skill is learning to live our lives such that our candidate list is constantly coming towards us. If my candidate list is coming towards me, it doesn't take too much skill. Well, if I'm on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm a 4. Do you know that the only way that I can impact a 5 is by becoming a 5? Fives will not respond to the guidance of 4s, will they? Doesn't make any sense, does it? If your life's experience and your successes are greater, then even if that 4 may have areas of more well-rounded knowledge than us, pride and ego gets in the way. 5s don't listen to 4s. And so if we want to grow our candidate list, what we have to do, we have to grow ourselves. I've got to stop being a 4 and start being a 5. And then I get access to all the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s and half of the 5s. If I want to improve my candidate list by another 20%, I got to stop being a 5 and start being a 6. And then I get access to the 1, 2, 3s, 4s, and 5s and half of the 6s. And that is why I've taught forever that the real business that I'm in is identifying people of goodwill and intent who are willing to learn more, because we can't act upon knowledge that we don't have, who are willing to develop more skills. Knowledge is good, but it doesn't make any money. Skill is knowledge acted upon on a repeated basis over and over and over. And when we become wise enough to subordinate our successes to the successes of others, then that's reflected in our character. And folks, the number one thing is to become the person that others want to be in association with. If we become the person others want to be in association with, then almost irrespective of the message we deliver, it will be well received. Okay. So now I think of the things that Levi does that makes the Levi is included in Levi that I believe, I can't prove it yet, that I believe will dramatically shorten the development curve. The first skill, learning to live our lives so that our candidate list is always growing in front of us. I will tell every person that we should never stop trying to become more so that we can appeal more effectively to more people. That should always be what we do. But I want you to become more profitable right now. The process of becoming, it might take me a year to stop being a 4 and start becoming a 5. It might take me a decade to stop being a 7 and start becoming an 8. The gains are very, very difficult as we advance along. And so I want a person's productivity to go up immediately based on the knowledge, skill, and character that we have right now. And so if the first biggest challenge that's always impacted every business owner is how do we have access to an unending stream of candidates? Well, in this case, we have an opt-in database of 2.1 billion people, and there is literally no limit. When I describe, because that's true, because you can access that database today if you want to, you can access it 50 times a day. You can. I believe the company will one day restrict it. What the program calls for, it says that we can access it 100 times in a month. But right now, there's no limiter on it because the company wants you to succeed. They want you to get numbers on the board. So when I said, can you contact 50 people in a day? Well, this becomes purely 100% a matter of willingness. It takes absolutely zero knowledge. It takes no big, broad circle of influence. You can access 50 candidates per day in the 3-county radius around which you live. And you can introduce this idea to 50 people a day without knowing anybody or having any knowledge beyond knowing how to write a simple sentence into your Levi business solution so it writes the script for you. If you can write that simple sentence. Now, the ability to contact 50 people a day is limited only by one thing, your willingness to do it. Just that simple. And that's the good news. The bad news is what? That means there's absolutely no excuse. There is no excuse. Now, if a person wants a lot, then they have to do a lot. 50 contacts a day for 100 days would set the stage for a future that you could probably at this moment not imagine. Because I'm willing to bet that most of you here have never experienced that. I'm willing to bet. Those of you who have been around the direct selling industry. What we do instead is enroll the 2 or 3 or the 5 people that are low-hanging fruit. We help them enroll the 2, the 3, the 5. Almost none have ever developed the skill of learning to live our lives so that our candidate list is always growing in front of us. And now, for the first time in my life, that candidate list, I'm approaching people with the idea of using Levi in their business. And I'm approaching people with the idea of using Levi in their lives. I want them to use it as a customer first. This is different than everything I've done in my whole career. It's always been business, business, business first. And you know what? Nobody ever went and got customers. I led with the product, and basically the network has always sold to itself. It's been the people who are in the comp plan buying the products from the company. If you want this to become an absolute stunning breakthrough financial success for you, let it be that you build a business that, just think about this tiny little bit of common sense. Can you imagine any business that started And you ask the owner, what's important to you? Don't you think they would all say customers? It's customers. That's what's important to us. Well, each of you take a look at your current back office. How many partners have you enrolled versus how many customers have you enrolled? I know what the answer is. Most of you haven't enrolled any customers. Most of you have enrolled just partners, who in turn enroll partners, who in turn enroll partners. What if we enroll partners and teach them that an evidence of leadership in this particular endeavor is to realize that we haven't really gotten started until we have 10 personally enrolled members? If our entire business is built upon an organization that has a minimum standard of 10 personally enrolled customers, imagine right now if you're opening a Subway shop, would your goal be to have 10 customers? I'm opening a sandwich shop, I hope I get 10 customers. No, baby, you would die really fast, wouldn't you? Like really, really fast. And so this idea of having 10 customers, that's just to get an idea of some customers flowing in your mind. I'll tell you my idea. My idea is to have personally enrolled 1,000 customers 1 year from now. That is my goal. And by the way, I also believe in, as you just saw, I believe in publicly stated goals. Goals that are held in the privacy of my heart, they don't get accomplished very often because I hold myself to a higher standard. Once I just said it to you, I hold myself to a higher standard because I can anticipate somebody along the way saying, hey, Randy, how you doing? You said you're going to have 1,000 customers after the year. We're 4 months in. How's it looking? I promise you I'm going to have conversations like that because I made a public statement of what I intend to accomplish. I'll also take it another way. Most of you have big goals. Most of you do. I know you have big goals, objectives. You want to move into. I promise you this. I hope all these things happen for you. If they all do, you probably find out we need to reestablish some targets a little bit. But you all want to move into a nicer neighborhood. The happiness you experience will be caused by what happens inside your home, not what happens outside the home and not which streets you're on. Right? That's the truth. But that doesn't stop the fact that society kind of thrusts that upon us. And so we want these things. Okay, well, I want you to have them too. Since I want you to have them too, then we need to do a few things a little bit differently. We talk about making a fortune. You could impact the lives of entire massive communities on a global scale by helping people make $2,000 a month. You can, by helping them make $2,000 a month. You make $2,000 a month, this thing, if you never recruit a single person to build the business, but you have 100 customers. Now, do I think anybody's going to have 100 customers in the next 30 or 60 or 90 days? Well, I plan on being one of the very first to do that. I'm going to go and prove to the world that you don't have to recruit anybody. You can just deliver this product because 178,000 people today are going to start using AI who didn't use it yesterday. They're going to pay more for an inferior service to that which we offer. And so my intention personally is I am absolutely going to evidence to people in the not too distant future that if there was no other part of the compensation plan, that I'm making $2,000 a month because I've got 100 personally enrolled customers who are not making the decision to stay with me next month on their check, which is what happens in network marketing. No, they're making a decision to maintain their membership because the membership does more than they hoped it would do. It takes all the pressure off. It takes all the pressure off. The Live AI product is fantastic. And so my intention is to prove to the world that in a relatively short period of time, you can make $2,000 a month with a pure customer-based income stream. That in a relatively short period of time, and I'm going to call that between a year and 18 months, you can make $20,000 a month with a pure customer-based business. And then you know what will happen? What I started discovering not too long ago, it's now, I began making the transition, I'm going to say 3 weeks ago, when the Live AI tool, when I started using the AI video tool. When I started using it, then I started finding out that if my first approach was about the use of the product, and I was able to demonstrate it with the use of that AI video tool, that the percentage of people who embrace the product use was a very, very, very high percentage. And it is a very rare situation. It's a strange situation where I ever have to bring up the idea of the business. Because by the time a person starts using it, we've gone through the illustration, the question always comes up. So Randy, do you work for this company? No. Well, why did you contact me? Oh, there's an affiliate program. Can I be one too? That is so much easier than trying to present somebody a business idea. You present to them a business idea, they want to know immediately, how much money did you make last week? How much money can I make next week? See, everything changes. Everything changes. I introduced the product, and before the product has even before they've been taught how to use it, is there an affiliate program here? Could I introduce to somebody else? Doesn't that change everything? It changes everything. if you can find it in your heart and your mind, if you can be willing to drop the useless baggage that you're carrying, and the useless baggage that we're carrying is the way things used to work in the network marketing industry. Just drop it. You can't pick up something useful if you're carrying around something useless. And too many of us are carrying around useless baggage because, Spencer Johnson wrote a book a number of years ago called Who Moved My Cheese? Folks, the cheese moved in the direct selling world. People will no longer pay an outsized price for a product because it's tied to a compensation plan. That day is over. The ship has sailed. People will no longer work for 2 years, 3 years, or 4 to start to make money. They used to be willing to do that because they'd go to big events and become a part of the community and get the 5 minutes with this microphone in their hand. Well, COVID came along and kind of ruined that. What if we try to force what used to work into this new environment? All it will be is frustrating for us and for those people we're trying to force. If instead we embrace the fact of change and then become the cause of the change being easier for more people, that's when all of a sudden this becomes something really special. Eric, you and I didn't really talk very much about what this conversation would be. I have rambled on for an hour, and that's long enough to make anybody listen to me. What I want all of you to know is this: I am deeply and personally committed to your success. You say, wait a minute, Randy, you don't even know me. One day, I hope that you do know me. And when you do know me, you will know that I care. I care for some reasons that are probably obvious, and I care for some reasons that are not, but I do. And I can assure you that if you ask me for help, you will get it. That being said, Eric, I turn it back over to you.
Man, y'all unmute the mics and give it up for our brother and friend, Mr. Randy Schroeder.
All right, all right, all right. Beautiful.
Well, Thank you,
Well,
Dad.
Beautiful presentation, Randy. Thank you.
Great shit, great
Awesome.
shit.
Now, the beautiful thing about going to a doctor. If you're sick, you need one, right? But if you feel something coming along, if you just want to maintain health as opposed to maintaining sickness, you find that healer, that doctor, that practitioner that can guide you along the way. This is why there was no discussion of how we were going to plan this out, how we were going to sort this out, because I understand it's the sick that need a doctor. I read that in a few good books. So, Randy, I can't say enough over what you just poured into us, definitely into me. And I would like to leave the floor open for any comments or questions that any of the team members here might have that you can address. And I'm turning it over to the floor. The floor is open, folks.
Anyone, anything. If I can help, I will.
Floor is open. I just see Brother Keith holding his head.
Okay, so there's no questions. I'm just going to teach you one more thing, and then I will.
All right, whether you got one hand up.
Hand went up. There we go. All right, fire away. Can you just unmute yourself and fire away?
Well, good afternoon. Happy Friday, Dad. I wanted to find out what's the best way to get a hold of you. Is it that Facebook group?
Now, I'm going to tell you my telephone number, and I will tell you that if I happen to be free, I will pick up, but it's not likely. And so text me, and whenever you text me, also text Samantha, my wife, and she's very, very in the business. She's not just the admin side. She does all parts of it. There are some things that she does much better than I do in the business. Her name is Samantha, and her telephone number, same thing, text her, don't call, 917-510-4641. Mine is area code 813-990-7651. And you'll find that we will always respond same day, usually much shorter, usually within an hour or two. It just depends on what's going on. And like if somebody's texting me right now, I don't interrupt this conversation to receive a text, that kind of thing. But we will always respond same way, same day.
Brother Randy, would you repeat the numbers for us
Yeah,
again,
you
please?
said it so fast.
Yeah, I say everything fast, don't I? And this was the slowed down version of me. I'm trying. Yes, Samantha's number is area code 917-510-4641. And mine is area code 813-990-7651.
Thank you.
41. 917-510-4641, and then there's 813-910-7641.
7651.
51. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Blessings to you, brother.
And to you. Thank you. Okay, folks, I'm gonna draw one more word picture for you and wrap it up because I got a little boy that I'm gonna take trick-or-treating tonight.
All right.
And that is one of the joys of my life. Okay, so I did not attend much college, as I described. I didn't even formally graduate from high school. But I was a talented high school golfer, and I actually had a Division I college scholarship to play golf. Drugs and alcohol were already becoming a problem for me, and of course, I didn't know that it was a problem. But I wound up losing my scholarship and being kicked out of school after one season. But while I was there, a professor made an argument. He taught a lesson, and he was talking about the economy, and he cited a stump speech that John Kennedy delivered when he was running for president in 1960. And Kennedy's comment, he was talking about the economy, and his argument was, he said that a rising tide lifts all the boats. What he was arguing was if the economy gets better for anybody, it gets better for everybody. I'm not sure that that's true, but that was the argument that he was making. If it gets better for anybody, it gets better for everybody. And so now let's just think about that for a second. So here, I'm not going to make you guess on my artwork, but I'm sure that you can tell that what I have here is the water level. And here I have the boats. And so what do you think? I mean, do you think that Kennedy was right? Does the rising tide lift all the boats or does it not? And when that question was first posed to me, I mean, the kind of logical thought is, well, yeah, I mean, if the tide goes up, the boats are going to go up. But then he said, well, what if your boat is not in the water? What if your boat is up there? Then will a rising tide lift all the boats? Well, not unless the water level goes up a whole lot. And so the question that I pose to you is this: is your boat in the water? Now, as it relates to our company right now, I can tell you that there is not a person in the company whose boat is in the water. We're simply too small. We're immature. My boat is not in the water. What does it mean to have your boat in the water in a company such as ours? Well, first for me, your boat is not in the water if you don't have 10 personally enrolled members, not partners. Your boat is not in the water unless you have 10 personally enrolled members. And so if the water level goes up, that does not mean that your boat's going to go up too until you have 10 personally enrolled members. And I'll say it over and over and over until people embrace the idea that if we build a business where each partner is responsible for $1,000 in volume because they have their own membership and 10 customers, now they have more than $1,000 in volume. If every partner is responsible for $1,000 in volume, that would be the first indicator that your boat is in the water. Now, another indicator your boat's in the water is simply this: if more than 60% of the people in your business only speak your language is English, almost all of you, maybe all. If the people in your business, they all speak English and that's all they speak, your boat's not in the water. See, there will always be times, those of you who've been around the industry for a long time, you know this, there's always a rotation around the center. If the overall company is going this direction, it's moving along at a certain pace, company's moving forward, there will always be a part of the company that is leading the advance. Right now, for example, in our company right now, our biggest growth by far is in the United States, by far. Well, if you're over here in Australia where there's no growth, then you see the fact of the United States growth is not impacting you, is it? And so your boat's not in the water if all of your income is limited to a certain segment of the company. Then there can be times when the overall company gets bigger, but the part of it that you're involved with gets smaller, and the vehicle's going forward, but you can go backwards. That is the absolute truth. And so first, your boat's not in the water unless you have 10 personally enrolled members, not partners. Your boat's not in the water if more than 60% of the people in your business speak only the language that you speak. Your boat is not in the water if you don't have at least 50% of your members and partners outside of the boundaries of the United States. Your boat is not in the water. And this is something that we all have to be aware of. Guys, understand, we need all of us need to be participating in the entire economy. My boat is not in the water if my entire organization is populated by 68-year-old white men. My boat's not in the water. Your boat is not in the water. If when you look around at your group is a lot like you. If it's the same heritage, if it is the same education level, if it's the same relative income, your boat's not in the water. Now, it takes time. This is one of the things, it takes a lot of knowledge and skill. There is a bunch that goes in to learning how to suddenly become attractive to all segments of population, as opposed to the easier attraction of those people who look, act, think, and whose life experience is similar to ours. So when I just said your boat's not in the water, if your whole group or more than 65% of it looks like you, that's a steep hill to climb. But it's a hill that I have climbed, and I can teach you how to climb that hill, and I can climb that hill with you. And I believe that will be of immeasurable worth in all parts of life. Okay, your boat, there's a lot of things then, aren't there, that get our boat down closer to the water. And so we identify these revenue producing activities. And there are only 4. The first revenue producing activity is to add a candidate to our candidate list every day. Now, I'm telling you, I think it should be a lot more than 1, but that's what it takes to meet the standard. If we add someone to our candidate list, that's a revenue producing activity. It's just like we had a truck down here, and the truck has a winch, and every time we do a revenue producing activity, it winches our boat down closer to the water. Every time we invite that candidate, utilizing a properly constructed script to let a tool talk, utilizing Lev AI, that's a revenue producing activity that winches the boat down closer to the water. Every time we present the business in a fashion that can duplicate, we've winched the boat down closer to the water. Every time we do a new member orientation that gives our newest participant the greatest opportunity to win the race to profitability, that means they get their money back before their credit card bill became due. That winches the boat down closer to the water. And every time we successfully guide a candidate up any rung on the ladder of escalation, every time we guide a candidate through every rung on the ladder of escalation, that winches the boat down closer to the water. And so now, finally, no more trick questions. Now your boat's in the water. Now does a rising tide lift all the boats? Most frequently, people say, yes, now rising tide will lift all the boats. Life is complex. It's not simple. Rising tide doesn't lift the boats, folks. What if the water level goes up? This boat goes up, this boat goes up, this boat goes up, this boat stays down. How in the world could that happen? What if this boat was so anchored to the bottom that it couldn't go up? Then you see the water level could go up. This boat is so anchored to the bottom that it can't go up. The boat will sink and it will drown the people in it. And so one of the key questions that I pose to all people is, what are your anchors? What are your anchors? Because those anchors are going to determine whether or not you participate in the growth of the company. Participating in the growth of the company is not the same thing as provoking the growth in the company. But to at least participate in the growth of the company, one must identify what are his or her anchors. And those anchors are anything that goes like this. It all starts with a limiting belief. What's a limiting belief? Anything that goes, I can't because, it's more difficult for me because, it's not fair for me because, he or she has an advantage and I have a disadvantage because. Well, all the limiting beliefs that I ever hear, those are not limiting beliefs. They're not limiting realities. They are simply limiting beliefs, which can be disproven. For example, when I didn't successfully graduate from high school, I had some limiting beliefs that perhaps that was going to tremendously negatively impact my future life. Well, it turns out that was a limiting belief. It was not a limiting reality. My life has been one of the most fortunate that I can imagine. When drugs and alcohol began to rule my life, when I got a lifetime suspension from the New York Stock Exchange because I was found abusing client accounts under the influence of cocaine, and that was written about in the newspapers, I had limiting beliefs. Ruined it now, Randy. Now you've ruined it. And on it goes. There was a time I was involved in the cholesterol reduction business, and I was 32 years old. I didn't care about cholesterol. I had a limiting belief that because I didn't have the need for the product and because I didn't have the background to represent a medical type product, that I couldn't succeed. Well, that was a limiting belief. It was not a limiting reality. Here's what happens, folks. As soon as we identify a limiting belief, I can't because my husband or wife doesn't support me. I can't because I don't have a husband or wife. I can't because I don't have the right education. I can't because I wasn't born in the right family. I can't because I've never succeeded before in business. All of these are limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs left unattended will almost immediately metastasize like a cancer cell into something that is worse. What's worse than a limiting belief? A limiting attitude. Why is it worse? Because a limiting belief only anchors my boat. Limiting belief, I can't because only I have that garbage in my head. A limiting attitude, we can't, you can't, because it's not fair. You see, when I allow my limiting belief to go unattended, that then metastasizes to a limiting attitude, which is the most selfish thing we can possibly have, because a limiting attitude anchors other people's boats. Don't do it. The second you become aware, there is a practical, proven, pragmatic series of actions we can take to eradicate limiting beliefs. The moment we become aware of them, recognizing that if we don't, they will metastasize into limiting attitudes and nothing good will occur. And then finally, that limiting attitude left unattended will metastasize further into actual limiting behaviors where we become consciously detrimental to other people's results. And we see that around all the time. And so my question for each person is, number one, what are your limiting beliefs? And if you don't know them, you need to find them pretty fast. Number two, have you allowed any limiting beliefs to metastasize into limiting attitudes and further into behaviors? Then we must take immediate corrective action. And I then live my life based upon a series of disciplines. Our time is spent. I'm not going to drag you through them. Hopefully we'll get another opportunity. Daily disciplines done daily build character. And I have a series of daily disciplines that are the pattern by which I choose to live my life. That series of daily disciplines are spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional in nature. When I act appropriately upon those disciplines, that results in me having financial strength. Everybody goes backwards. They want financial strength in advance of spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional strength. That is folly. It will not happen. If it happens, it'll be fleeting. It'll disappear. If I have spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional strength, that makes me eligible for economic strength. And I will not tell you that I think that a good marriage takes money, but I will tell you that I think that financial strain will put more stress on an otherwise good marriage than almost anything else we could possibly imagine. Okay, I have rambled on way too long. I appreciate you guys being here. I'll turn it back over to you, Eric. And anytime you want me, I'm available to help however I can, okay?
Thank you again, Brother Randy. Folks, in our WhatsApp group, we received an invitation to join the accountability group. And of course, it's our production that makes the difference. So pay attention to the WhatsApp groups. Make sure you plug in. Make sure you stay engaged. If you don't plug in, you will always have to clock in. That's just something that you might need to consider. I want to thank you again, Brother Randy, as all of us do. Y'all unmute your mics, throw some love on them, and we'll see each and every one of us on the next live stream, 9 p.m. Let's go. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Randy.
Thanks,
God
everyone.
bless.
Have a good
Greetings
one,
to
Andy.
Samantha.
And thank you. Bye-bye.
Go and see what I can find in wood, leather, and.
Thank you
All
much,
right,
sir.
family.
Thank you. All
All
right.
right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Let's go and mute the mics, love on each other. See you on the next live stream.
Blessings to all. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Peace and blessings, everyone.